Good afternoon. You're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Jes Delos Santos. Let's take a look at how the local bourse closed today, Tuesday. Okay, shares plummeted at the last minute on Tuesday, even after government finalized guidelines on the alert level system set to be piloted here in Metro Manila. That's going to happen September 16. Shares were pretty much poised to end higher today, as you can see this chart right here, buoyed by the easing of restrictions here in NCR. But some last minute dumping pulled shares lower by 0.7% to 6,920. That shift to more localized lockdowns alert level 4, specifically for Metro Manila, is set to allow more businesses to resume operations at a limited capacity, but that's not reflecting on our leaders and laggards for today. Only a handful of blue chips in the green here. Primarily, telco and internet stocks are continuing the rally. As you can see right here, Converge at least is heading the pack here up by close to 3.5% now. Converge, as you can see here, ending the day in the green. So is Globe, also higher by 2.7%. Same scenario as well for PLDT, the last stock, and the positive territory here for today, up by 0.75%. Also interesting here, casino operator Bloomberry also in the positive territory, edging higher by 3%. But businesses more directly affected by the easing, like Jollibee, capping off Tuesday in the negative territory. Jollibee down 0.3%. Same scenario as well for mall operators like SM Prime, Robinson's Land, both stocks ending the day in the red. But bucking that is Mega Road, which rose at least today 1.7% to 3 pesos a piece. This, of course, as its REIT unit, M REIT, begins of their offer period today. Also, interesting here, Robinson's Land REIT unit, RCR, likewise, on its maiden share sale today, inching higher by 1.6% from its IPO price of 6 pesos and 45 centavos a piece. Again, correction, at least RCR today higher by close to 0.2%. Now at 6 pesos and 46 centavos a piece. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. Metro Manila, again, will be under alert level 4 starting September 16 under the government's new quarantine classifications. Now, under level 4, it means case count remains high or increasing. The same goes for healthcare utilization rate in the area. Age restrictions still in place. Those outside the high-risk age brackets are allowed. Inter- and intrazonal travel, leisure attractions and services shall remain closed. Now, outdoor exercises are allowed, but limited to the area of residence. As mentioned, more perks are in store for the fully vaccinated under the new lockdown rules. They are allowed indoor dining at 10% capacity, while al fresco dining will be open at 30% capacity regardless of vaccination status. The same rule goes for personal care and religious services. On-site government work is restricted to 20% capacity. Now, unified curfew in Metro Manila has also been adjusted and will be from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. for the duration of the pilot alert level system. The government is looking to start vaccinating the general public by October. In his weekly Talk to the People address aired this morning, President Duterte says they are targeting to vaccinate the general adult population in light of ongoing infection spikes. He says this will depend on whether there are enough vaccine supply that are available. So far, healthcare workers, senior citizens, persons with comorbidities, economic frontliners, and indigents are being inoculated at the moment. Government experts have since raised the target herd immunity population to 90% as the Delta variant poses increased threat. The Education Department said there were no major problems or issue in yesterday's school opening. Undersecretary Nepomuceno Malaluan gave this assessment on Radio 5's Failon, claiming parents and students have grown familiar with the blended learning setup since last year. However, he admits remaining challenges in terms of modules, with the DepEd deciding to go digital, while some schools are still dependent on traditional printed copies. Malaluan says they are also addressing internet allowance concerns among teachers.
Ang tingin natin ay maganda dahil wala naman kaming natanggap na mga yung malalaking problema at issue. I think this is because mayroong kaunti na tayong karanasan from last school year.
Meanwhile, Education Secretary Leonor Briones tells One News' The Chiefs that more students are expected to enroll even after the official start of classes. 24.6 million students are enrolled so far. The Education Secretary also denies that schools had already been closed for a year as alleged by critics. Briones also clarified reports on supposed school closures.
Schools at that time in April. And I would like to correct the impression that our schools were closed for 1 year. That is not necessarily correct because we closed school in March. And then April, May, you had 2 months vacation that was perfectly legitimate, perfectly legal. And then by October, first week of October, we opened classes. So I'm wondering where that impression of 1 year closure of schools is coming from.
And as mentioned by the Education Department, public schools across the country are expecting more enrollees this month. But what about their private counterparts? To talk more about this, we have on the show Attorney Joseph Noel Estrada. He is the Managing Director of the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations, or PACUCOA. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Good afternoon, Attorney Joseph.
Good afternoon, Jes, and good afternoon to all your televiewers.
All right. So again, private schools started the school year earlier compared to private schools here across the country, which started their academic year just yesterday. But so far, how's the school year going for private school? Any improvements from how it was implemented last year?
In terms of the enrollment, we're way below our numbers from compared to last year. We're just nearing 57, 58% from our enrollment last year. We're just around 1.5 million as of yesterday. And that's around 57% lower than the previous year, which was around 3.3 million. But if we compare that number even to the previous year, pre-pandemic, we're down more than 60%. So it's not good for us. And we're also monitoring the number of schools that remain closed because of the economic impact. Remember, we have around 865 basic education schools that closed last year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's digest that answer. Okay, you did mention 57% dip, at least from what you had in the previous school year. What do you think are the factors here that led to a lower enrollment here among private schools?
But the number one reason is still the economic impact and difficulties of families, parents of the students in coping with the financial difficulties in sending their kids to the private schools. And many of the schools actually transferred to the public school system. Many of them, around 200,000 last year. For this year, we're also monitoring that. And other reasons like connectivity, technical difficulties, the digital divide also contribute to that factor of the low enrollment.
And given that as well, how so far at least is the ongoing school year here for private schools? I mean, how are you coping? Are students somehow already adjusted to online learning, or is this something still a point? Is this still a sticking point here for private schools?
In terms of the delivery of education in the private sector, I think most, if not all of the schools have actually successfully migrated to flexible and online learning platforms. However, the real problem is on how to sustain the operations given the low turnout of enrollment. And of course, we're also looking into the effect on the students of a prolonged online or flexible learning. So we feel that this cannot also go on for a longer time. So we hope again we can prepare for at least a gradual, limited face-to-face reopening of our classes soon.
Okay, let's talk about that later. But at least for now, you did mention as well earlier that you're still trying to monitor as to how many schools decided to shut down for the school year so far. At least, if you can give us an update on that, how many schools so far at least have you monitored deciding to at least close down?
We're still basing our numbers from last year, around 865 that discontinued their operations because of the pandemic. And we're waiting for the final data also from our government agencies, especially the Department of Education.
Mhm. Does that, are you expecting that as well to translate to more job losses here for those in the education sector?
I'm sorry, can you
Are
repeat
you
that?
are you expecting that to at least translate as well to more job losses here for those in the education sector?
Yeah, certainly it will affect the school personnel. In fact, even without the school closures, the cutting on costs, of course, impacted the school personnel first, and that's part of the remedies of many schools, resorting to retrenchment and redundancy of certain employees, even resorting to no work, no pay, unfortunately. So those are our concerns, our stakeholders, not only our students, but definitely our school personnel.
Torny, just to better understand the situation, can you give us an idea by how much was the workforce slashed last school year?
So if you're looking at around 50% decline in enrollment, so that would really impact the ability of the schools to pay its personnel, because the average cost of for a school for its operation, 70% actually goes to salaries of school personnel. So you can just imagine. So most of the schools have cut on their cost on salaries. So not necessarily retrenching or terminating employment, but cutting on the salaries. Now, unit loads, also hours of work, because of also some cutting on subjects, core subjects also mandated by the DepEd.
Okay, again, of course, one of the major issues since the pandemic started and since schooling started here, of course, concerns about piloting face-to-face classes. UNICEF, for one, has flagged the country. We're just one of 5 countries in the world that at least have not returned to physical classroom setups. Would you say it's high time for us to at least pilot face-to-face classes here in the Philippines?
Jess, ever since last year, I think around the September also or October, around the same time last year, we were already calling for preparations to do the pilot. So I think we have a lot of catching up to do. We're not saying to open as soon as possible, but we're saying preparations should already be in place at this time if we're looking for a gradual, limited piloting of the face-to-face delivery. Classes is already open for this school year, so we also wonder when are we going to really implement that limited face-to-face classes. The parameters, the policy environment in the private sector is very different from considerations in the public schools. So again, we appeal for our government agencies to initiate and engage us in the preparation, so that we can also have the confidence of our students, our parents, when we give that option to them to have the limited face-to-face reopening of our schools.
Of course, doing that entails a lot of balance. You have, of course, still increasing infections, and then you also have to consider the country's vaccination pace. And more to that point, would you say that the Private Schools Association at least is going to support calls to inoculate minors?
As long as it is supported by the experts, the public health experts, epidemiological studies, and the international examples, of course, we will we will comply with what our experts would say. And you have mentioned the vaccination and safety. Those are actually the considerations that we're looking into before we actually agree to have a limited and face-to-face delivery of learning. Because again, even if we say we will be giving that option to the parents, I don't think the confidence now is very high. The acceptability is very high. A lot of the things that have to be addressed are actually outside of the of education itself, but it concerns vaccination, as you already mentioned, public safety, public transport, areas where we need to prioritize, and of course the liability of private educational institutions in cases of surge in the virus for the younger students.
Okay, definitely lots of things to consider here, especially with this growing call for a return to face classes here in the Philippines. Thank you very much for your insights and your time this afternoon. Attorney Joseph Noel Estrada, Managing Director of the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations. Thank you, sir.
Thank
And those are the biggest stories this trading day, September 14, 2021. Catch Business World Live again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jes Delos Santos and we are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.